everybody. Welcome to the newest episode of Coffee Table Conversations. And welcome to a new, very exciting guest. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm Spider. I'm a new guest on the podcast. It's a 80-degree day in Los Angeles. Getting some air outside. You can't see me, but I'm tanning in the video right now. And things are good. Welcome. Thanks for having me.
Anytime. I'm always glad to have a very exciting artist on the podcast.
Well, thank you for that.
And actually, I really want to hit the ground running and tell me and the audience about your new project, Down Below.
Oh, thank you, my friend. Yeah, we're just finishing up production. I think we'll be done in the next few days, and it's kind of like a psychological horror film that takes place on Christmas Eve. Eric Roberts is in the film. We just actually wrapped him about a week ago, and it was like the dream come true for me as a filmmaker. You know.
Yeah, that's incredible.
It was just surreal and just, such a pro, such a great guy, and just, really, really allowed us to kind of really dig creatively on some pretty challenging scenes that we were trying to tackle. And, I'm so excited, not just by that scene, but the whole film in general. And really, this would be I'd say my first film as a director. I've done a lot of shorts, and as a writer, I've sold my fair share of features and TV movies and streamers and all that kind of jazz, but this one is kind of my first baby, passion project film. And we're coming around the mountain soon, very soon. So it's
really exciting, man.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's been an adventure. It's I always say, because I kind of came in as a writer more, even though I've been making films the whole time and YouTube shorts and whatever, but the writing thing was the first thing that kind of caught people's attention. And so for the longest time, I was just writing scripts and, for Hallmark, for holiday films. I had my first horror script made last year. But I was always making films. But, as a filmmaker, a lot of times you need budgets and things. And
yeah, absolutely. And like horror,
right.
I found is really that gateway for a lot of directors.
Yeah, it totally is, because for you get those budgets that are like 1 to 2 million, and it's like you can actually make a film that looks kick. Can I swear?
Yes, you can swear. You can swear.
I almost just say kick butt, but I was like, that sounds kind of corny. But yeah, you can make a really kick-ass film for $1 million to $2 million versus a lot of the other genres that you're trying to make an action thriller and a $1 to $2 million budget. It's just terrible with people running around with guns and BB guns and car chases and stuff. But with horror, you can make like a studio level looking film, and it's just because the nature of horror,
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like Halloween was a very, very cheap movie that was made very fast, like only a couple weeks. Yeah,
and they make those things. It's pretty wild, and I've always been inspired by all of those horror films and all those big budget successes. I mean, Saw was like a $1.2 million horror film. Went on to gross 100 million or some crazy number, 300 million. But you hear stories from like James Wan, and it was like, we didn't have time to get the coverage. My scenes weren't working, and then we realized like we could take this one angle, make it security cam footage, and that was going to help my coverage of how to get from this scene to this scene and this scene. And it was like one of the great things that came out of that problem is like one of the great parts of that film, which is like the whole jigsaw
mm-hmm. Yeah, like
really a creative problem that needed to be fixed, which is this isn't cutting.
Yeah, I mean,
and I love that.
Filmmaking really is just problem solving. Like with like Jaws and the shark, that is like notorious for not working whatsoever. But the fact that you don't see it for most of the movie makes the movie so much better.
and yeah, and I've had that conversation with like maybe 20 people, and every time it really kind of like makes you smile because you're like, wow, like what made that film so well is the shark being so minimalistic in it and not seeing it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny that the film was going to go forward with like tons of sharks, and you sometimes wonder that without that shark too, with it breaking down, that maybe the whole score like wouldn't have played as well, because you're like, the score comes from not seeing the sharks, where they're like, we need to sell the shark when he's not there.
Yeah, because the score was basically the shark.
Yeah, and so sometimes it's like, I feel like the greatest like cinematic moments in history came from a massive and producers and production designers and whatnot being like, okay, this isn't working, and the vision of the film that had the shark in like, you know, every scene is like collapsing, and if we force it, it's gonna just be miserable. Or we recognize that there's a better film here, and I think the most successful filmmakers are the ones who say, you know, we're abandoning plan A for not plan B, but plan Z, you know? It's just totally off the map choice.
Yeah, the ability to adapt under pressure.
Mm-hmm. And I know just for me and my, you know, I'm very early in my career and just starting out with this, and, you know, just compared to a lot of the filmmakers and producers and actors and people I meet, it's like I'm always like a little guppy on sets. But for me, I'm like, oh my gosh, I just learned so much every time. And it's always like, wow, the best of the best are like, have a game plan, but when there's a better moment to be had, or the original plan's not working, they're not like strangle holding onto that plan because of, this is how it was supposed to be. It was supposed to be raining, and it was supposed to have sun parting through the clouds at 5 o'clock. It's like, okay, do you need that to tell your story? And if not, maybe there's something better going on here if you just open your eyes. And for me, that's been like the epiphany every single time on every single shoot.
Yeah, like flexibility, the ability to like listen to the people around you, and see what's like the better plan.
Dude, especially when you're working with people who are like veterans and people who have just soaked in so much knowledge. You know, for me, it's like that's one of the great treats of working with you know, pros and in all capacities, that I'm just like a sponge, and I'm like, well, I want to do this, and they're like, well, this, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And then I'm like, well, what if we did that with this? And then he's like, well, then I would do this or that. And all of a sudden we've like ping-ponged into just, you know, an explosive idea that just came from a dialogue of, you know, wisdom mixed in with practical, you know, what can we do here in this, you know, timeline? We got 3 hours left to shoot. We don't have, you know, an infinite timeline to mess around. So
yeah, and that's the beauty of film, is that like it's not like all the different arts, you know, like books or like a painting or whatever. It's a singular vision, but with film, it's like an orchestration of a billion different artists.
Dude, it's like, you're right. No, it is an orchestra, and there's so many little instruments being played, and if something is being played incorrectly, it could ruin the whole orchestra. And so, you know, I personally am like, every department, I'm always like, are we getting what we need to get here, you know? Because it's that thing where it's like, you have a great scene, but if the sound design on it is just predictable, or the, you know, the props are just like rented out of H&M, you know, the wardrobe is like straight off the rack at H&M, and it's like,
yeah, if it's not believable.
Yeah, it's like this guy's supposed to be like living in the woods, and he's got a shirt that's got less stains than my t-shirt on, you know?
Yeah, like one of the biggest hang-ups in the production for The Godfather was the horse head.
The horse head.
And did you hear the story that like the horse head is an actual horse head?
Yeah, I watched that whole offer show.
Yeah, I watched that documentary on my vacation like a month ago and loved the whole thing, and that little detail makes that movie even better. Dude,
you know, it's always those little details, and you know, if there's a if there's a wizard out there, it's Francis Ford Coppola, man. Like,
Yes, there is.
I love the Apocalypse Now, Heart of Darkness doc about him, and it was like talking about shooting Marlon Brando. They were going to pay him $1 million a week, and then he showed up, and he was like, 120 pounds heavier than what he had said, and so he didn't want to move around out of this cave, and he just wanted to eat mangoes all day, and it was like, well, I got to do something here, and then it's like, and then it turns into that, I think it's Colonel Kurtz or whatever his name is, and it's like that character becomes this iconic guy who lives in that cave, and he's like in that shadowy scenes where he's just pouring stuff out of his soul that's clearly not written, and it's like, you think about that film, and like the most effective part of that film is that whole character and him losing his mind to the madness of the Vietnam War, and it's like that just came out of, like, honestly, a massive nightmare of a problem,
Yeah, and also the most unique parts in film are usually when they don't go according to plan.
Yeah, so true. It's so true, and it's so not like that as a writer too. Mm-hmm. As a writer, you have perfect control, perfect. I feel like writers are very OCD. They're every single word and every single syllable, and
yeah, like the trouble of being so dedicated to your script that you think it's like Bible.
Yeah, and then you basically sell your movie and don't realize that when your film is needing to be made in 22 days, that those precious scenes that were supposed to be like this, and this are going to need to be scrapped because the snow truck didn't show up, so there's no snow, and it's like,
how's it been like that for you in like the kind of difference between just being a writer and directing your first feature?
Well, I must say that with the holiday films, actually with all of my, I think I've had 3 movies produced and 1 story by as a screenwriter, and one of them, the horror film, came out on Tubi. It was like a Tubi original. It's called Teardrop.
Yeah, I remember.
That was a spec script I wrote sitting in Starbucks. Like, I wrote that thing in like 2016. I don't know what I was doing. I was like, I don't know. I was like beat up about some girl, and I was like, I'm going to write a script in like 25 days or something. And like, that was that script, and I like gave it to a producer, and they were like, you wrote a horror western? Horror westerns are the most unmarketable genre there is. I'm not even going to read it. That was literally the only reaction I got, and I was like, okay. And it was the producer who was like,
I mean,
my God.
They were wrong.
They were wrong, but in that time, this thing called Jonah Hex had come out,
mm-hmm.
and it was like this massive horror western thing, and it was a huge flop. And so it was this weird moment in time where, like, oh man, I guess. And that was my like main producer who had made my other stuff, and I was like, well, I guess that one's gonna go on the shelf forever.
Were you distraught?
I think I must have been, probably for like a few days. But I usually, and I always tell writers this, I was like, I try not to sit around and think about what if with projects. I usually, when I finish a script, and I think it's one of the healthier things I do, is that I almost immediately dive into my next project, because then you're in the new honeymoon phase of a new story, and you're like, wow, I'm loving this story so much, I don't even care about the last one, what happens. And so if nothing happens, which usually happens most of the time, is nothing happens for a long period of time, you're just not like so emotionally attached to it. And so I mean, I've written like 27 spec scripts, and I really advise writers to, like, yes, you finish the script, send out all yada yada, but like, keep writing your next ones as you're trying to send it out.
Yeah, you got to move on, or you're gonna,
you're going to need it.
Be a stick in the mud.
Yeah, because you're going to need that script to give you something, instead of understanding that it did give you something. You have a written great piece of material. You became a better writer from it, and it will always be a part of your quiver. But it doesn't mean it's going to sell. in the next 2 months, and that's the kind of thing that you think it's going to sell, because everything I've ever written, I thought I was just like, oh, this script, I'm going to sell it, I'm going to be driving a Porsche 911, like it's going to be so easy. And then that one assistant who's supposed to pass it up to this guy doesn't even answer, just doesn't even respond to my email, and I'm like, well, that whole plan just collapsed. So I always am just like, okay, I'm on to the next project. That's always what I do. So with Teardrop, I think I was in a firestorm of loving writing sci-fi and other stuff. So I was just like, whatever, like I'm just on to the next project. But then, came full circle when I met a producer all these years later, and he was at Tubi, and he was like, hey, we're looking for a horror movie that takes place in an old West town. Have you happened to write anything that weird and crazy? And I was like, yeah, I have. And I sent it to him, and I think maybe a month later, there was an offer in my inbox. And then the movie was in production. The first director they gave it to was this awesome guy named Stephen R. Monroe. He did I Spit on Your Grave, and he was signed on, and then the film was shooting, I don't know, 3 weeks later.
That's insane.
It was effortless. It was the easiest project I ever got made, yet it took 6 years. So
it paid off though.
Yeah, but so that's how I say, the only thing I don't try to do, and I've been guilty of it, is get in the what's it called? Get in the whole time capsule of freezing and nothing matters until I sell this project. I don't let my mind go to those places.
Kind of just get stuck in a moment you can't get out of.
Yeah, I don't like to do that, because I just feel that the happiest artists are ones who feel power in their lives and not helpless. And I think the most helpless feeling in the world is saying I need an agent, or my career won't start, or I need to sell the script and my career won't start, because then you're just waiting by your email and your phone for your life to start, instead of no, your career is starting when you're writing great scripts and when you're writing stories. That's a fact. Not when CAA is now finally agreeing to take your phone call. That's just not real. So yeah. I always say it's I don't know, just give yourself permission to feel good about your career and yourself when you're writing, and when you're writing a lot of stories. That to me is the king win,
Yeah. How do you think your mental health figures into your writing and your directing?
I'm not one of those artists who is doing it for a cathartic thing. It's just not my thing.
Yeah.
I don't really write any stories that are even remotely personal to me. But they are, if that makes sense. They're not rooted in personal issues.
They're not literal.
There's nothing literal about them.
Yeah.
I like watching movies that are psychological and heavy hitting, but they're genre tales, The Shining or Tarkovsky's Solaris. But I like big ideas and big premises and kind of escapist premise and high concept ideas, but I still like them to be grounded and psychological and dramatic.
Yeah.
But I just don't watch. I don't oh gosh, my boss was mean to me today, I'm gonna put this and there's right out there, that's just not me. I love cinema and filmmaking and writing, and it's more from a place of giggles and excitement and oh gosh, that line was so sick, or the way Brad Pitt found when in his head in the box in Seven is so twisted and dark, but also I'm also what a brilliant choice for the screenwriter to have made that. So I don't, it's just almost I don't really watch things from to be honest, a total immersion of story. I'm more watching it as what a brilliant storyteller and story and performance and film that is. Not oh man, this reminds me of this time on the playground where I gave that kid a note to pass that girl, and he it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Have those moments. It's more.
It's more of an appreciation of the art form.
Yeah, I love the art form. I just love movies, and I love the movie going experience, and I love movies. I love movies with big plot twists. That was always my thing. So I would any movie that had like the best plot twist ever, I watched it. You know,
Yeah.
They didn't all have a great plot twist, but I watched them.
Yeah. Where did the idea for Down Below come from?
Dude, it's that same thing though. It's like it didn't come from anywhere. It more of like came from like, oh, I really want to try to make this haunting on Christmas Eve film that's not like a normal like ghost in under the bed movie, you know, where it's like 5 kids in a cabin and there's a serial killer or there's a poltergeist or whatever. You know, to me, those movies don't really do it for me.
Yeah.
I kind of lean more into liking films like David Lynch's films, like Mulholland Drive or Eraserhead, or Darren Aronofsky's films. I just like I loved Mother. I love The Fountain. You know, David Fincher as well. But you know, I really like. I even like this film that a lot of people haven't seen called Enter the Void by its director Gaspar Noé. It's like he's a French filmmaker.
Interesting.
I don't know. I kind of enjoy these films that are like really pushing the gas pedal on what the medium of film and storytelling can really be. Like, it doesn't need to be this traditional 3-act structure.
Not naturalistic.
Yeah, those are not my favorite films. Oh, you know what I really like? I like that director who did that film, The Lighthouse.
Oh, yeah.
And The Northman.
That was. I can't think of his name.
Gonna kill me.
But
and he did The Witch as well.
Yeah, he's a terrific filmmaker.
I should know his name. I hope he doesn't watch this.
I'll just pop the name on the screen in the editing.
I like literally saw he was on Roger Deakins' podcast, which is, by the way, great.
Robert Eggers. Robert.
There you go. But like, I don't know if you've seen The Lighthouse, but it's like I'm watching it and I'm like, my gosh, this guy has broken every single rule about how to tell a mysterious lighthouse movie.
But that's why it's good.
Yeah, but to me, like, that's what I love, and that's what I also want to do. And there's also great creative risk with doing film like that too.
Yeah,
because you can, you know, and I don't even think that it's easier to miss. I just think that you can explain to people like, oh, like, you know, this was supposed to be like Halloween meets whatever.
Well, yeah, like the kind of the relation pitch that a lot of people expect. Like, this movie and this movie, like what Spielberg and George Lucas had to do with Indiana Jones.
Yeah, and you can explain to audiences or people or your investors or whatever, it's like, this is this, but, you know, I only believe that Christopher Nolan is on the map with, like, Memento and, you know, Fallen was because Memento was a pretty out there film, you know? Like,
absolutely.
We look at it now, same with Pulp Fiction, like, you look at it now, like, yeah, I remember my mom was like, you know, the crazy thing about Pulp Fiction when I saw it in theaters was like, it was like John Travolta comes back to life. And I'm like, no, he didn't come back to life. He just unfolded the story in a way that you now pick up on the beginning where it started, and John Travolta's still alive at that point. But from audience's point of view, it was like, oh my God, John Travolta is alive again. But that's the level of storytelling innovation that is, that it was so out there that people didn't really even comprehend what was going on.
Yeah, because it breaks the conventions of structure.
Yeah. But then we stop. We talk about Pulp Fiction and we worship it as though, like, oh my God, this is why we need to innovate. But then you have the next, only filmmakers are only willing to do now is just make their version of Pulp Fiction. But do you know what I'm saying? Is then it gets all the mimics of the innovation instead of like, all right, now I got to do what Quentin Tarantino did, which is take a massive risk and fall on my face and do something no one's ever seen. And so to me, that's kind of the torch I feel like filmmakers have to carry.
Yeah, because you think they're like, well, they're taking the wrong lesson from those movies. Mm-hmm. It's not that you have to do what they did, but you have to do something that's you.
Yeah, and take the massive risk, right? So I always say that and it's not easy to be when you're in those situations when you have an opportunity in front of you. But I really feel that my writing opportunities have only actually been executed because of massive creative risks that I took in the middle of the opportunity, which could have very easily just killed it, even though I already had momentum, meaning it was like, okay, we want you to do this project, we want to buy it, but we want you to do this thing. And instead of doing that thing, I was like, no, I'm going to do this. And I'm like, I'm going to do this because this new ending is going to make this better. And then they're like, there's this long pause or a long wait for the email. And then they're like, we love it. And that's the thing that takes the film to the end and gets made. But the safer choice is always to just like kind of go under the radar, whatever they need, whatever, and not take the big risk, because if you take the big risk, you might lose the job. But to me, you're guaranteed to lose the job if you have a great idea of how to make something better and you don't voice that idea.
Absolutely. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
To want to make it as a writer and filmmaker and not be comfortable with like risking it all on a big idea, a big scene, a provocative opening or whatever, it's like
You got to be bold.
yeah, you're just hoping that someone is going to hire you to polish their stuff, and no one wants to hire people to polish their stuff because people don't want to pay people. I mean, Christ, we're in a writer's strike for God's sake. Because
Yeah.
people don't want to pay people. So, you know, the only way you can really guarantee your success, in my opinion, is to be just like a total innovator on the page and have such a voice and stamp on your material that it's like, man, I may not understand what the heck AJ's new script is about, but you know what? It made me feel something and it made me excited for cinema, and we're going to let him do it. And that's how you get jobs. It's true. You don't need to be like, straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
No. But it's scary. It's super scary to be authentically yourself.
I mean, especially in an industry that is, well, constantly changing, but also, I mean, it's a whole new world right now.
Oh yeah. Like it's constantly changing, and but again, you know, I go back to this. Like, if you're gonna get your shot, put your best foot forward, which is your wacky original ideas. That to me is like where you separate yourself from every other writer in town. And if you're not willing to take that risk when the opportunity comes, when will you ever? Right? Like if your goal, you know, and it's, I guess it's a gamble, but I feel like you've already made a gamble when you decided that you wanted to pursue a career in the arts.
Yeah.
You might as well take the ultimate, which is like, hey, I want to write a script that David Fincher directs one day. It's like, okay, if you want to do that, you better be willing to write the craziest script ever that's just totally original out there. And when someone offers you money to change it into something conventional thing, you're like, no, because this is so good, it's going to get there. That's not easy to turn down opportunities, but that's what it's going to take. So I just think you have to have that little bit of, you know, reckless abandon and extreme confidence in not, you know, delusion, but in like, hey, I got into this writing thing to do something special, and I'm going to write things that I feel represent that, not I'm going to try to, you know, turn my stuff into all my great stories into something that the industry wants.
Yeah, like a reasonable unreasonability to be you.
And nobody knows, bro. I mean, nobody knows, dude. Like I said, my horror Western thing was like, I got such a big no, they wouldn't even read it. You know, it's like,
just had to move on to the next one, and eventually it paid off.
Yeah, and Tubi wasn't even around yet. And same with the Housewives of the North Pole. That script, that log line was written in I have a document on my computer. It's like 2015. 20 Christmas log lines, and one of them was the Real Housewives of the North Pole. And it was one sentence. 2015. It's like 8 years ago now.
Wow.
Silly.
Yeah.
And I had 3 people try to make it over the things and like just couldn't get it going. So I was like, just believe and keep going, keep moving forward, keep taking new action, and just don't sit around in your head in your apartment and ask Hollywood why it's unfair. Don't get into that stuff. Just keep creating, you know?
Well, yeah, because at that point you're not doing anything.
Yeah, and it's really like, to me, you know, I always say, like, you know, I know you wanted to harp hard on like the whole, you know, mental health thing with your podcast, but I always say to people, like, I know a lot of people I came up with this game in which Hollywood, we started, all of us, like, because we just love making movies and writing movies, and it was like nothing but joy. In fact, I'd say the worst stuff happens is when the idea of results start coming in, because then you're like, if I don't get results on my project, then it was not worth it.
Yeah,
That's
the danger of, you know, the digitalized media that we have now, because all we're thinking about is numbers and, well, everything that like a producer needs to think about.
Yeah, and I remember when I made a short film in like high school with my friends, and it was like, you know what the currency was? The big win was like us watching it and like having a beer and watching it, and we're like laughing, like, this is the best thing ever. Like, that was the win.
It was just the joy of seeing something that you made finished.
And I think that everyone is ultimately the same reason they got in is because of that feeling. And I think that feeling gets lost when it's like, when you've got, you know, your uncle or someone is like, you're still doing that and you're not making a living. Like, you know, you start getting those voices in your head. Like, oh, you haven't found a way to monetize what you love? Well, that can't be worth your time. And then people start getting panicked or sad or angry or whatever. And it's like, dude, just do it because you love it. Work other jobs, stay busy, take new action, you know, and keep it fun. Like, if you're right, you know, getting boring, write a novel, do this, make a film. That's what I say to people. It's like, be flexible.
Just don't let it get to your head.
Yeah, dude, that's the problem with writers, myself included. It's like, we are so good at writing stories, right, that we can write a really bad story for ourselves. That's a damn good quote. I'm gonna say that to myself one day. It's like, but that's the reality. Like, if you get too much time to think, you'll start making a story of why you haven't made it or why this hasn't happened or whatever, how it's supposed to be. Oh, I was supposed to, at 19, have done this and that. And I literally, when I was 23, I was on the set of my first movie in Canada, and I was like signing some little autographs in this coffee shop, and I was like, oh my God, this writing thing is so easy. I'm gonna be a multi-millionaire in any second. Like, I'm gonna be working with Tom Cruise on my sci-fi script. Like, and I had all these things, and there's a great element to that, but the crash and burn part of not achieving those things made me like in a rat race where I'm like, oh, I can't have fun until I'm, you know, so I'm just writing, you know?
Yeah.
So you just have to, you gotta be careful with those timeline things, you know? That's me, my own experience, and something I still struggle with. Like, let go of the timeline. Nobody cares. No one's judging you. Stop judging yourself about it. Like, making art at any age, dude, that's why I love Twitter. Sometimes there's like, people are like, wrote my first script, and it's like, you know, an 80-year-old. I'm like, bam, dude, that guy is having the time of his life.
Yes, he is.
He's literally, like, he just figured out his plot twist, and it fixed with his beginning, and the part there was a problem, and then finally he fixed it. He's like laughing and cheering. Oh my gosh, like, best mistake ever, you know? And it's like, man, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, there's no expiration date on this thing, because I mean, like, do you have people like Hitchcock or Denis Villeneuve? Like, Denis Villeneuve has gotten in, you know, late to other people's standards, but, you know, he's making incredible movies.
But really, it's like, you look at it and you're like, what? For him, you see, I listen to some podcasts, it's like, oh, he's making films the whole time and having a jolly good time. So it's only like, oh, dude, you made your first film at 41? Like, that, it's like, yeah, he's making movies with some of the greatest, you know, Hugh Jackman, Prisoners, Jake Gyllenhaal. I mean, come on. You know, I think that timelines are very silly.
Yeah, it doesn't matter when you do it, just that you do it.
And we make timelines when we start getting a little bit older, because you know what, I met 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds who are like, oh, I feel so old because I had it. I'm like, bro. And I mean, you know, like, I was like, dude, that just cut those words out, yo.
Yeah.
Like, I got some friends, like I just turned 31. They're like, dude, my back hurts now. I'm like, shut the F up, dude. That's still, like, I just surf big waves. Your back doesn't hurt. You need to, like, go to the gym and stop eating Carl Jr. every day.
Yeah. Because, like, I mean, if there's something bad going on in your life and you don't take actions to fix that, then it is your fault.
Well, dude, and that's where I think filmmaker writers, and that's where I've seen exactly what you're just talking about, right? Like, I'm a big believer in action. I don't think it's easy to take new action and to change your stuff, but there's only one way it's going to happen. But I think that the problem with Hollywood is the idea of Hollywood. I used to believe too, is I felt that there was this club that if I just sold my script, then I would become an insider, and then I'd never struggle. And then the people just reading my stuff faster and make movies, and I get invited to parties where I meet this person, and then all of a sudden Matthew McConaughey's my friend. Then he's going to do this script about this thing, and then I meet whatever, and it's like this giant crafted plan because once I get one move, then Hollywood will let me in.
That you're like trying to reach a peak.
Again, Hollywood is also not an entity. It's just a bunch of different artists, entrepreneurs. A lot of these people dislike each other. Mm-hmm. It's not even this friendly town. It's just a massive amalgamation of different entrepreneurs and cities and people. And so I think that illusion of Hollywood and like, you're welcomed in is what gets people all frustrated and waiting, because they're like, once I get signed by APA, then I'll sell a pilot, then I'll go move to WME, and they have this whole like strategic climb based on a mirage,
Yeah, it's not a real thing.
No, it's not, and it's not a real thing where it's like, oh my gosh, you're just working on different projects each time, and you might get better at pitching, you might get better at writing, and so you're getting more jobs, not because I'm in and I have credits. I've found that I'm getting more and more work because I've become a better storyteller, but it's still as hard as it was on the first one.
Okay.
I think that, like, my thing is, I want the pure passion writers out there to succeed. I do. Like, the ones who are fiendy and doing it for fame, and I don't really care about those people. But the people who are actually, like, if I wasn't watching anything, who are like, dude, I love telling stories, and I'm like, all right, and it's going to show in your work, it's going to show in your work ethic, it's going to show in your ego too, where you're like, hey, look, I want to, find a way to write movies. Love that. It's like, for those people out there, I would just say, like, you just need to love screenwriting. You need to love it. And I'm not saying that you need to love all parts of it. There are frustrating parts in the writing process. But you need to love overall what you do and not want to trade it for anything else. Mm-hmm. If you're doing it to get somewhere, I really strongly urge you to find a better thing that gets you to wherever that place you want to go.
Because you're doing it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, and because you'll be disappointed. And that, even me, like, sometimes I'm like, that's why, I've shifted more and more into directing, because, like, I sometimes wanted writing to be a lifestyle that it wasn't. And I'm like, writing is like this, and I'll be, continue to sell scripts, this, but it's, like a very nomadish, like you're at Starbucks and coffee shops a lot, and, you get all the schedule and flexibility, but I'm like, it's not my favorite thing, although I love writing. Mm-hmm. But like the filmmaking, it's like I'm working with my cinematographer, production designers, teams of people, scheduling. I like the pressure cooker of like the shoot date and like, will it work out? I enjoy that stuff. And so, but there was a period of time where all I wanted to do was write and go to Starbucks. And I went to Starbucks every morning at 7 a.m. and I wrote until 4 p.m. and I would just write. Couldn't wait to wake up in the morning and work on my scripts. And that was reality. And so I just think people need to root themselves in that sick passion and sick love. And if you do that, you're going to make it. You will.
Awesome.
It will, it's just that simple. But
totally.
It has to be for a pure reason, or you won't write long enough in order to get your win.
Well, yeah, because, without, like, pure love for this kind of thing, I doubt you're going to last that long. And
I wouldn't want you to last that long.
Yeah.
what an eternal torture if you're doing it so that you can, live in a mansion. It's
get fame or whatever. Because there are so much easier ways to get that than write or direct.
Or you want a more adventurous lifestyle. It's like, dude, book a ticket to Indonesia.
Go backpacking.
Yeah, you don't know, and I really say that out of the most pure thing of don't use writing to take you somewhere. Write because you want to tell your stories and you love it. And I'm not saying you need to be divorced from the idea of results. I'm not a monk about, I'm just writing scripts to write. I want them all to get made. I want to get paid. But at the end of the day, I also wrote those scripts because I was like, man, this is a creative challenge, and I'm excited to try to tell this underwater, alien movie.
Yeah, I mean, you got to enjoy the process because sometimes it's just going to be the process.
Yeah, usually it just is. And when you get a big payoff, later, when it's 6 years later, trust me, dude, it's not the same kind of win of you're like, oh, I let that thing go. I totally forgot about that thing. And it's just bam. So thank God I enjoyed the process of those scripts, or it'd be not that great of a win,
Mm-hmm. How long have you been writing and directing?
I probably started seriously writing in 2013. Wow, so about 10 years. I think I wrote my first script in 2013. Yeah, it was a comedy script that still trying to get going, actually. Really great script. It's called Mouth to Mouth. Had Tobin Bell attached at one point.
Wow.
Yeah, it's had so many people who loved it. It was got my first agent at the time, and I got all these meetings. I met with Mandeville Pictures and Point Grey and all this stuff. And I was in college still, and I was like, this is insane. You can write stories and the world is your oyster. And I still believe that, but it's that's my early start was just 2013, I would say. Yeah, and it was just telling you, man, I almost feel that the key to lasting this town and the key to loving it is also to go back to that ignorance is bliss place about how the industry works. So that would be my other tip, which is try to get off social media and the trades and all that stuff. Don't need to know everything that's going on because it's going to make you not feel that good.
Yeah, it's gonna scare you away from kind of flying as high as you can.
Yeah, because I'll start getting all realistic. Oh my God, this type of scripts aren't selling, or this writer I didn't think was good is now. You almost are just better off, trying to build your great life, your friends, your family, or whatever you want to do, and then writing your stories and writing stories that you're I cannot wait to share this with my best friend, and see what they think, or my mom or my brother or whatever, or my best friend who's an actor, and see if we want to try to make this as a short and a sizzle. It's get into that mindset, and I know that whoever's listening knows what I'm talking about because we've all been there. But it's to try to really try to live there, and then just trust and have faith that the success and other shit will come, because it will. But it won't come if you're sitting around and waiting for it.
Well, yeah, you got to build it first.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I don't know. I love what I do, but I can also see the dark side of it. And the dark side is usually about the waiting game. And I think the waiting not good. And I imagine other industries and things have it too, music, whatever.
Yeah, that's why.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's why I related a lot to the movie Tick, Tick, Boom.
I didn't see that. I gotta see it.
Yeah, that's incredible film. I mean, it's about musical theater, but it perfectly translates to what it's like to be a screenwriter.
Yeah, and I'm fortunate. My parents are screenwriters. They co-write together, and but they always had a blast writing together. They have been married my whole life, obviously, and they just love writing together, and it's a joyous experience, not without frustration where my mom's yelling at my dad, I don't like that line, but overall, the lifestyle that gave them, which they could be around us and raise the kids and stuff, really suited what they wanted. Not without struggles. They were doing apartment writing speeches and stuff, whatever, you know. But
Yeah.
overall, they really much liked what they did and continue to do. And so I guess my thing is just like, make sure you love it. And if you don't love it as much as you did once, try to refine the love, or try to find wherever else in movies that love is taking you. And I try to use, I always try to be as honest as possible in these things, because I don't like people putting out things. But like for me, like one of those things was I've found myself in the last few years like not getting the same joy out of writing that I did. And I was like, oh, maybe I need to write new scripts. And it was like, no, I've written enough scripts at this point that writing more scripts feels like not enough of a creative challenge.
Oh yeah.
And so it was like, okay, how do I get my other dream going, which is like directing and making films, where I'm still a writer on it. So it's still like I'd work on the script, but I was working on a script now to direct, and for a scene I'm going to shoot tomorrow or whatever. And it had an entirely different euphoric feeling where I'm like, oh, I got the jitters and the nerves and I cannot wait. And it's like, okay, so you shifted.
Yeah. And like,
Don't be afraid to shift.
how did you shift from there?
I just decided that I was going to try to make my next film that I was starting to write. I was like, I'm not going to write this to try to sell. I'm going to keep going until I find someone who will invest, or a production company who will produce, or an actor who will, do my crazy passion project, and just continue to keep going and keep going in the same way that I do with my script. But this time saying, you know what? I'm making this film, and I have a vision for this film, and I'm going to attract people to work on this project who arguably don't are above my pay grade, because they're going to just read my script and hear what I'm going to do with it, and they're going to be like, you know what, this kid is like got something to say with this, and I want to be a part of it. And now it's just kind of my like idea and genesis of how I would go about to get the film go off the ground. And just, we blink our eyes and it's like, oh my gosh, like all the things we set out to do have happened and are still happening. And it's like, okay, keep going. Don't get too excited now. Keep going, right? but I think that gave me the childlike joy of, this is new, this is scary, I have sleepless nights, those kind of things. And I think that, look, no one wants to have sleepless nights, but at the end of the day, a sleepless night also means you really care about what you're up to. And I think that those things are indicative of you doing something that scares you and challenges you. And I think on the other side of that stuff is always the goal. And for me, there was a time where writing was like that, but I kind of lost that feeling in the last, couple of years, especially after I started selling a few more things, where I was like, maybe this writing thing has led me to another passion of mine in movie making, which is like writing to direct.
Something that gives you more jitters.
Yeah. And I have this crazy feeling that, I might blink my eyes down the line and like, I don't know, I'm in a different scenario, or like maybe, I've got kids or whatever, and I'm like, hey, I want to write scripts again and be at home now. It's like, but right now I'm like, I'm a young dude. I'm like, I don't really want to be sitting around and writing like scripts. I want to be out there like leading the charge in the jungle apocalypse now, and like losing my mind trying to make my film. Yeah, you know what I mean? And that just excited me on a far deeper level than
just kind of being out there in the action.
But that was a change, and that was new, because I always actually felt there was a time where I started out directing shorts in college, and then I was like, oh my gosh, I want to be a writer. So I stopped because I love writing. And so you just kind of have to follow those rivers of passion, and let them change and let them grow. And if one's not like, I don't even look at it as like, I think people use the word like quit. It's like, don't use those kind of words. It's just like you're growing and evolving and adapting. And it's like, now your energetic level is taking you to this part of the industry. Hey, like I never thought I was going to be wanting to work on a crew. And it's like, hey, maybe I want to go into camera stuff, or maybe I like production, or maybe I like music and sound and post. And I just think that if people open their I don't want to say heart, but open up your possibility meter, there's a million ways to get you to your awesome goal, and a lot of those ways may be even more fun ways than just like hammering away on your pages and waiting for Gotham Group and Gersh to like read your script on the blacklist and discover you and then start submitting, you know.
Kind of being open to alternative roads.
But I waited a long time for that stuff and it never showed up, and my success came from me just saying, oh, maybe I'm not supposed to have an agent or a manager, even though I thought I was supposed to, and I feel, you know, a little bit insecure that I should have one. But then I was like, well, okay, what would I do if I didn't want? I would write this script because I wouldn't have anyone telling me what to do. And like, those are the projects that got going. So you see what I'm saying? It's like
open to other paths.
Free yourself to like other paths. And it comes across what you said earlier. Like, that's at the end of the day, movement and motion is new action, and new action is going to create new feelings, new results, new ideas, new opportunities, new people, new relationships, new everything. But it won't if you're just beating a dead horse. Like, I'm only going to get in as a writer by writing my script and submitting it to whatever, Blue Cat Screen Contest, and then all of a sudden the writer's strike hits and you get an email from Blue Cat and they're like, we're not technically allowed to send your scripts out to reps this time, but you still won first place, so congrats. It's like, wait, this was supposed to give me my career, what's going on? You know, don't put yourself in that position.
You've got to be open to adapting.
Yeah, you have to, and if you do, oh my gosh, then the world's your oyster, because you can walk 5 different directions and find water in the desert. But if it's just one way and that gate closes, you're helpless, powerless, you're angry, you're scared, you're afraid, you're feeling sick, and you're gonna need to, you know, someone to wake you up and say, hey, try something new.
Yeah, that's something I've been learning a lot. Just to talk about myself for a little bit for a second.
Please do.
I'm doing like a billion different things at the same time. I'm working on a lot of scripts. I'm working on my first feature right now, actually. Like not my first feature to write, but the first feature I want to direct. And I'm also working on a comic book anthology series with a friend of mine who's an artist. I'm also working on a very ambitious fan film universe for DC. And also I'm working on a manga. I'm working on TV series Bibles. I'm working on a fantasy novel. Just kind of as many spinning plates as possible.
Dude, that's amazing, by the way. I mean, kudos to you for being able to juggle all that stuff, but also to like, you know, to really make sure you finish everything you start, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's something I've learned a lot is like, well, I'm really honing in on this feature because this has been the story I've wanted to tell for years. And it really feels like the culmination of, you know, honestly, the past 8 years.
Dude, so you have a big why, you know? You have a big why.
Mm-hmm.
You have a reason, you know?
Yeah, like, I mean, this has always been about the why.
Well, you're doing all that stuff, and then it's like, hey, like, this project gets going, and I wasn't expecting to do manga, but it's like, here I am. I'm gonna go with that. I'm gonna go with that note for a little while and see where it takes me. And then all of a sudden, you meet this person on a project in that world, and they become your creative partner or whatever. And it's just like you grow when you're in motion, and when you're static, nothing. You stagnation. You freeze and you wither. You know?
Yeah, you're not going anywhere.
Dude, look at like I was telling you, like I'm gonna tell a story because I just think it's such a great, powerful story. But like so I teach some private swim lessons on the side to like
that's awesome.
Kids. Yeah, I teach like kids, and they're like their age is like 3 to like 6 usually. And most of the kids are at the age where it's like 4 or 5, and they're like they can't swim on their own. So that's like the big moment. And I'm a big water person. I surf every day. I swim. I played water polo in high school. So awesome. I'm all like, the water is life, whatever. But they all get to this point where they're doing all right with the floating wings and whatever, and then it's time eventually for them to try to doggy paddle their own. But in order to do that, they're going to have to push off the edge, and they're going to have to try to swim a couple yards to me. And that's going to require them to, for the first time ever, use what they've got and take a leap in themselves.
Kind of like take off the training wheels.
Yeah, and they don't know if it's going to work. And every single kid, without fail, starts screaming for their mommy, their daddy. They have to go to the restroom. They're cold, they're shivering, and all of them try to get out of it. All 13 or 14 of my kids have tried to get, not my kids, the kids I'm teaching. I have 14 kids. I'm a delivery man. But all of them, without fail, have tried to get out of it. And if their parents or me weren't there to say, hey, little Joey, you're going to do this, they would have, okay? Because the level of fear and emotion they're feeling is so guttural and so awful, and they're so hyperventilating, some of them, and whatever, shaking and this or anxious or whatever, their hearts racing. They have every reason to believe that they should not be doing this, and this isn't good because they shouldn't be feeling so horrible about it and uncomfortable. But 13 out of 14 kids had me and the parents be like, hey, we're going to do this. You're going to at least try. And upon doing it, swam on their own. I didn't catch them. They kept going. And then by the end of that lesson, we're like, I want to swim more. Swimming is my favorite ever. And just got filled with this rock solid confidence and euphoria and joy from something that literally 14 minutes ago, they were like, dude, you feel their heart rate through the roof. They're like this. They're having panic attacks and screaming. And the one kid who basically got his parents to I was telling parents, dude, you need to make sure he does this, because if he gets out, he's going to think that the way he feels, he was right to not learn how to swim, but really it's just the uncomfortableness of new and growth.
Yeah, the fear of the unknown.
And it's this beautiful microcosm, because now every one of those kids is can't wait for swim lesson and love swimming on their own, and it gives them so much joy. But in that moment, had they not had an adult or a supervisor or a coach or accountability, they would have convinced themselves that they made the right choice. And I think as adults, we don't have the parent or the coach who's basically says, no, kid, you're staying through practice. We can convince ourselves, and there's nobody to hold us accountable. And so we get out of doing things because they're uncomfortable. We get out of growing and trying new stuff because it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, we have no lifeline, so it's really down to us to figure out if we're willing to take that leap or if we're too afraid.
And I think that almost 99 or 100% of the time, on the other side of the most uncomfortable scenarios that you don't want to be put in, you usually have that uncomfortability because there's a part of you that wants to be doing the thing that's on the other side, but you don't want to have to go through it, but you have to. And so that's where I almost feel I'm like, okay, I don't want to do this thing, or maybe making this part of making films is I have to talk to agents, I have to do this stuff or whatever. It's ugh. And it's you know what, maybe I shouldn't do it. It's I need that voice to come up who's effectively my coach or my parent or whatever. Not because there's when we don't listen to them that way anymore, but it's of my higher self who's Spider. Mm-hmm. You're feeling bad, you're feeling scared, you're feeling nervous and uncomfortable, unsettled. But that doesn't mean that you should walk away. In fact, you have to do the opposite, and you're going to have to show up tomorrow, and you're going to have to do that thing that scares the heck out of you. Mm-hmm. And you have to force yourself to do things that are uncomfortable, that are good for you long term.
Because it builds resistance.
Dude, if I didn't have my parents, I would have not gone to school. If I didn't have my parents, I would have not gone and done sports in high school, which where I met all my friends and whatever. It's some people need that accountability, but it goes away, and so we need to have it in order, especially now it's hey, this path that you're going on is going to need you to have this person who's an authority figure in your mind who's you're going to need to do this, or you're going to need to stop doing this,
Yeah, we need to have that within ourselves.
And not just listen to how we feel, because how we feel can be totally incorrect. Mm-hmm. That's the massive point of the big little kid swimming metaphor, is that all of their horrible feelings about swimming were vastly incorrect.
Yeah, and then when they were able to cross that barrier, they just wanted to do it again.
And it was so much fun, and it was like, oh, that was what they thought swimming was going to be. They thought it was going to be death. But in fact, it's joy and it's freedom, whatever. And that makes it fun. They want to swim laps right now.
And that's what's beautiful about life is that, you know, once you cross that barrier, there's no fear.
Dude, you weren't kidding, man. We got deep on the show, bro.
Yes. I snuck it in there like that. Just like that.
No, but you know, I think it's great, and I like, you know, because I think they go hand in hand. And, but, you know, and I think it's hard to talk about because we don't want to talk about this stuff, but I think it's important. And especially important because it's like, not saying movie making should make you happy all the time, but it should make you happy a lot. And if it's not because you're not meant to be a movie maker or writer, but maybe there's something wrong with your approach and your process and
absolutely,
your mindset about it, you know, where it's like your mindset is like I need to do this, and then I'm gonna be able to finally tell my mom and dad that I'm a filmmaker. And it's like, just tell them you're a filmmaker now, and that you love making films and you make a career. You don't need to sell Sharknado 4 before you do it. It's not going to make you feel any more confident about going to telling someone you love, who doesn't necessarily prove what you're going to do.
Yeah, I mean, you are or you aren't, and you just have to be bold and tell them and the world that this is what you're doing.
Dude, exactly, man. But yeah, dude, so that's pretty much me in a nutshell. And just, you know, my thing is I'm really excited to share this film, and I think it's really special. I think it's the most special project I've ever worked on in my life, and I say that having written 27 scripts and made a bunch of shorts and things, and a no-budget 51-minute feature. But this thing I'm working on is just, I don't know, man. You know, I don't like to use words like fate and stuff, but I sometimes feel that like every single thing that's ever happened to me in my life
has like led to this.
Yeah, and so in that way, maybe it is very personal, but not in the like way that it's about anything that I've gone through. But there are things and lines and character ideas and stuff that came from scenarios that are arguably not fun scenarios for me that I wouldn't have done in this film if I hadn't experienced it. It's sometimes filmmaking in that way, more than writing to me, shows you, because you see it on film and you're like, damn, like that scene was totally inspired by this thing that happened here, that I had to go through this.
Like came from the lessons of everything that was before.
Yeah, and so I guess in that way, films are incredibly personal to me. So I will retract what I said earlier, but just not personal the way that they're about. So if you're trying to watch my film and you're like, this happened to Spider, it's like, you'll never find it.
Yeah.
I'm not a goat haunted by a ghost in a western town.
He's haunted by the ghosts of all the filmmakers before him.
Oh man, dude, thanks for having me on, bro.
Yeah. Well, big question.
Yeah.
What's your favorite movie and why?
Oh. Can I have 3 favorites?
Yeah, we can go with 3. It'll be like the Letterboxd.
Yeah.
4 or whatever.
I think my 3 favorite films, and people are gonna like hate me for this, but I don't know why, but I love The Fountain by Darren Aronofsky. I think it's his most despised film he's ever made. I think it's one of the greatest films I've ever seen.
That's really interesting.
I also love The Shining, which when I first watched it as a kid, I despised it because I thought that it was like going to be a straightforward horror movie with a plot twist, and it was like this weird exploration of like an abusive father and his son.
Well, yeah, it's not like I mean, I think a lot of people when they're younger kind of expect every horror movie to be like a slasher or something.
Yeah.
Which, like, every horror movie isn't that. Like, slashers are great, but not every horror movie should be one.
Dude, and that one, yep, that's how I felt about that. And then most recently, I got really into this filmmaker. His name is Andrei Tarkovsky, and he was this Russian filmmaker. I think he died in like 1981, but he made this film called Solaris in 1972. It was remade by Soderbergh or something later, but the original is just, I watched it like 3 years ago, and it was like mind-bogglingly changed my life, and Interstellar as well, so I'll say 4. Those 4 films have had the biggest impact on me in terms of impression on filmmaking, storytelling, what you could do with story, and I've watched all those films at least like 7 to 10 times, so I've probably given away how many hours of my life to films, but I still think those films have found my way into my work, even when I'm writing a very very intimate psychological horror Christmas film. There's still elements of Interstellar in it, and things like that. But yeah, I'd say those 4 films are my favorite films of all time, and I couldn't choose one equally, because every month I change my mind, and this is my favorite, and then I'm back to that one, and I just keep cycling.
Yeah, my top 4 is really weird.
Let's hear it.
Okay, my number 1 either really triggers people or they love it. I don't know. My number 1 right now is Scream.
The original Scream.
Yes.
I love the original Scream.
Wes Craven is one of my biggest inspirations, like directorially and just in the filmmaking business in general.
Great screenplay, by the way. That was the early I read when I started writing horror. I read.
Yeah.
Remember? Kevin Williamson.
Yeah. He's
right.
He's a really inspiring guy for me, because he's such a tight writer.
Dude, and not easy, by the way. Props to him and the director to make a 15-minute phone call scene actually gripping.
Mm-hmm.
That is so not easy to do. It seems so so effortless, but that is even the blocking of that scene. Now that I'm directing, I'm like, my gosh, to block a scene on a woman on a phone, group around a phone, and make it not redundant and repetitive is really difficult.
Yeah, I think the opening to that film is genuinely one of the best opening scenes in a movie ever.
It is, because
it just completely grips you automatically, and I think really the job of an opening scene of a movie is to convince you that you should be watching this movie. It's like an appeal to the audience that this is the movie you should be spending your time with.
Dude, a million. What's number 2 and 3?
Okay, number 2, Batman Mask the Phantasm.
I haven't seen that one.
I think it's the best Batman movie ever made.
Gotta see it.
The Batman is obviously incredible.
That's the
Matt Reeves. Yeah,
I have to see that one as well. I guess I was a lover of Christian Bale one.
Dude, Matt Reeves is even better.
Okay, I'll see it.
And the thing with Batman the Phantasm that's fascinating to me is, well, one, it obviously comes from what would be called a kid's show.
Yeah.
But it's such a dark and haunting story. The music is incredible, because Shirley Walker, to me, is the best composer who's ever worked with Batman.
Okay. Don't spoil it. I'm gonna watch it.
Yeah, I won't spoil it, but basically a serial killer kind of story, and
don't say no more. I want to see it.
it's fantastic.
I love it.
Next is Across the Spider-Verse.
That's the first or the sequel?
It's the sequel.
Dude, people are going nuts for this film.
I watched it 3 times in theaters. Which I do not do a lot, but one, I'm a huge fan of animation, and I loved Into the Spider-Verse, but in the first 5 minutes of Across the Spider-Verse, I already knew it was a better movie. It's that good. Yeah, just absolutely mind-blowing.
I'm stoked, dude. I gotta watch these films, dude.
I just gotta give you a list.
Dude, please send me a list because I'm always looking for new stuff. And you know, it's funny you said that whole thing about like Batman, the whatever kind of kids, but really dark and gritty. Because sometimes I embarrassingly admit that one of my weird low-key favorite films is Scooby-Doo Zombie Island.
Dude, it's so good.
It has that.
I think.
You know what I'm saying? Like that film has a way darker, where the zombies are actually real and it's not like a monster in a mask. And I was like, oh my gosh, like they broke Scooby-Doo, and like instead of it being always a mask, it was like actually supernatural. And the cat.
Yeah, and it's like it draws you in. In like the first half, you know, it just feels like a regular Scooby-Doo adventure. Kind of re-emphasizes all of the roles in this world. You know, like Velma's the skeptic. Fred is like, you know, they're just businessmen in, you know, masks and whatever. And Daphne is still convinced that, you know, there's a real monster out there, and you don't even realize that that's the truth until like Fred pops off the head of a zombie, which is just where it kind of just throws itself into horror in a genius way.
Dude, I'm gonna have to watch Scooby-Doo's Island and Batman back to back.
Yes. I love animation. It's one of my biggest passions. Like it would be a dream for me to work on an animated movie.
Well, guess what, my friend? You can make that dream a reality.
Yes, I can.
You can make it
I actually have, like, okay, I'm this crazy. I have a list of all of the movies I intend to make. So whenever I think of an idea for a movie, I write down the title, and I write a full premise for the idea.
Dude, that's, you know, I think that's just a beautiful, positive, artistic process, you know? I'm excited for you, man.
Thank you. I think next thing I really want to ask is, and I know this is a complicated question for someone in film, but is there a specific IP that like would be a dream for you to work on?
Yes. Perfect Dark. You know what that is?
Perfect Dark.
It was a video game from 1997 that I played.
Oh right, yeah.
It was like a female James Bond role, and I just thought it would be the best thing ever. But that would be it. For the most part, I kind of like being not tied to properties.
Absolutely.
Whatever I want.
I agree, but I find it's always interesting to see like what specific thing someone has in mind if they were to have the opportunity.
Dude, yeah, that would be my thing. But dude, my phone is literally about to die here. About 4%.
Yeah, it's okay. We have 2 minutes left on it, anyways.
Oh, beautiful, dude. I am didn't want to interrupt you in the middle of like, and this thing, and then
just blacks out.
Just blacks out on like an epic moment. Although that'd be kind of cool.
It'd be dramatic.
Brother, I had such a blast, man, getting to know you.
Yes.
Your creative brain and your I love what you're doing here, man. You know,
thank you.
Inspiring, creatives and filmmakers and artists, man.
That's my dream.
They need voices like you too, man, to keep them inspired and saying, hey, like, you feel a little down the dumps, like, that's all right, that's normal, but like, how do we get you back out there feeling good?
Exactly.
How do we get you, I love that stuff, dude.
Yeah, I really want to build a community for artists.
You are, dude. You are.
Thank you.
Yeah, brother. Well, you'll send me this whole thing, huh?
Yes. And
Send me a link. I'll post it on my socials.
thank you. It should be out, I'd expect, tomorrow.
Oh, beautiful! I love the turnaround.
Yeah, I try to get things out as fast as possible.
I super appreciate that, man. And yeah, send me all the stuff, and so I can put it everywhere and all my.
Yes, and if you want to do this again, we can do it after your amazing movie is out.
Dude, that would be so sick. I would love to, man, because I'm hopefully very soon have a couple more pretty killer updates to cast and stuff. So
Yes, I'm really excited for you, man.
I'm at the boiler, man, but it's just trying to do what I feel what
Yeah,
I'm supposed to do. But brother, I really appreciate having me on, man. And
anytime.
email me all the stuff, okay?
Absolutely.
All right, man. You have a great day.
You too.
Take care, bro. Bye.
Take care.